Palestine and a non-resident fellow at the Centre for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies. Mouin, many thanks for talking to us on TRT World. As far as this ICJ public hearing is concerned, I wonder how much confidence or even interest many people will have in another ICJ hearing on Israel, given that in the very recent past, most of their hearings and indeed their advice and rulings have not only been ignored, but in many cases flouted by the Israelis.
Well, entirely flouted, going back to the 2004 ICJ advisory opinion on the West Bank wall, all the provisional measures that it has issued in the course of the past year in respect of the genocide case brought against it by South Africa, and most recently, of course, the advisory opinion on the illegality of the continued Israeli presence in the territories Israel occupied in 1967. They're not only being ignored, as you said, they're being flouted outright. But having said that, these rulings, I think, are of fundamental importance because they build the case for Palestinian rights and demonstrate that Israel has absolutely no right to do what it's doing. In this particular case, this is not a case that is being brought against Israel by Palestine or by South Africa, but rather by the international community as a whole, because the UN General Assembly, with a majority, voted to request an urgent advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on Israel's really unprecedented violation of not only its obligations as an occupying power towards the Palestinian population of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, but also in terms of what it is doing to the UN's own rights and privileges with respect to its ability to conduct operations. So it will be an important ruling. It's being issued as a matter of urgency, and the ruling is expected in July. But as you said, will it immediately change anything on the ground? No, Israel is not even going through the trouble of making a submission to the court. It's leaving that to the United States, of course. It will be important, but it won't change anything on the ground, certainly not in the near future.
Mouin, do you believe that the United Nations and the institutions of international law that it is trying to uphold and enforce are in danger of becoming fatally undermined by the impotence that the ICJ has had in the face of the Israeli reaction to a lot of these rulings?
Well, I think many people would say that the international order has already collapsed and that Gaza was the largest and final nail in the coffin. I don't think the problem is with an institution such as the ICJ. The ICJ does not have enforcement mechanisms apart from the UN Security Council, which is, of course, held hostage by the US veto in all matters concerning Israel. The problem really is an absence of political will, first and foremost by Israel's Western sponsors and allies. And there's also been, I would argue, a tremendous show of weakness by the UN's own political leadership, from the Secretary General's office, from the Departments of Peacekeeping and Political Affairs, where you now have a situation where the strongest and most outspoken statements are being made not from the top of the UN, but from officials such as the former head of OCHA, Martin Griffiths, now the head of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, and so on. So I think the UN also needs to take a hard look at its own role and its own failings during this live-streamed 18-month genocide.
Mouin, just quickly, what do you think the legacy effects are going to be of Israel's regards to specifically to the United Nations and to UNRWA? In particular, I'm thinking about the ruling that we saw yesterday, rather the closure of the schools as a result of Israeli laws passed over the last couple of months. It really does seem that the legacy, sorry, just to finish the question, it does seem that the legacy could be fairly significant and fairly long-lasting, not only in terms of, as I say, the actual United Nations, but also in terms of what it will mean for Palestinians in the occupied territories.
Well, you're entirely correct. And if Israel is once again allowed to get away with this, just as it has been allowed to act with total impunity, not only for the past 18 months, but really for more than the past half century, then I think it's high time for the international community, acting through the General Assembly, to begin dealing with Israel as the rogue state that it is, similar to the way it dealt with the white minority regime in apartheid South Africa during the 1970s, the way it dealt with the former Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and suspend it from the General Assembly and basically began treating it like the rogue pariah that it is.
Mouin, thank you so much for that. That's Mouin Rabbani, who is a co-editor of the Jadaliyya magazine and a non-resident fellow at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies.
Thank you.